as readers, we know how important it is to diversify our shelves. Today, we have Carla is reading to talk about why it's important to read Latinx stories and really be able to diversify our bookshelves in a way that's intentional and tons of smutty fun. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast contains mature content intended for adult audiences only. Carla, I am so excited to have you here. I want to know, before we get into all things Latinx representation in romance, how did you get started on this reading journey?
Hi, oh my God, thank you for having me here. I'm so excited to talk to you. So how did I get on this journey? I think I've always been a reader. What happened, though, that really got me full into reviewer mode is that I started to interact more on Instagram as a bookish person versus regular content, the stuff that you throw out there for family to keep in touch with the kiddos and stuff. I started to post book reviews and I saw the hashtag Bookstagram. And then from there on, that just kept evolving. Then it was like, I don't care what's happening in my life. Let's talk about this book. Because then that's how you start making the friends. And it's really the community that came along with Bookstagram that kept me on there and what has now evolve into what it is today, that I have a book talk and a Bookstagram and stuff like that with a Instagram live series. So that's really just like the love of reading, and definitely romance more specifically is what really brought about this journey of mine.
Yeah, and we're all about romance over here and read the open door stuff. We read smut, obviously. Like, it is all about that. You are a Latina. How does that incorporate into your reading journey? I know for me, as an Afro-Latina, when I first started on Bookstagram and first started like getting into this community, it was very whitewashed. And like a lot of the authors that I was being pushed were white. A lot of the authors that I was personally reading were white. And I had to, at the end of the year, looking at my stuff saying, this is a core value of mine to lift up voices that are underserved. How can I make sure that I'm doing that, not just in my business and how I show up there, but also in what I'm reading and the content that I'm consuming and the content that I'm promoting? So I know that was kind of my journey. What was yours?
The same as you. I wasn't conscious of what I was consuming. I was just what was there, the bestsellers, right? That would be my next pick. It wasn't until I encountered, during COVID, Alexis Daria's You Had Me at Hola. I knew that there was Latinx representation, but what I didn't know was like the beautiful Puerto Rican representation. And it wasn't anything that was like corny, like how I've seen in media, that some things can make you cringe and you're like, oh no, that's not how we are. This was a very much a contemporary Puerto Rican woman that she's here. She's a fangirl of things. She's an actress. She's trying to make it. She's trying to be a better person every day. Meanwhile, she still has the parents like bugging her in her ear, asking for updates. And I was like, I've never had this kind of representation. Like, I had like a crazy mind-blowing moment that I was like, what is this? It started this hunger. I was like, well, now I need more of this. Yeah. If this book exists, there must be more, right? And so then I started searching, and I have literally like a breadcrumb trail. It was from Alexis Daria to Priscila Oliveras to Adriana Herrera. Very distinct. I know exactly how I got to where I am now. Not only that, it was also Black romance, because like I grew up here in Florida with so many cultures. I'm in an interracial marriage as well. So like all this language, this verbiage, all this culture, this is me. I was inside these groups. And so it was like through Alexis Daria, like Alexandria House, all these people that I was like, okay, no. This is the romance that I've been looking for. These are the people that are talking like me, that are talking like my friends. I understand this swoon. This swoon actually makes me swoon more than that swoon, you know? That's kind of how it happened. Then, not only that, I noticed that no one else was talking about these books, right? And I was like, hey, did you know that I got the same heart flutters? Did you know that like this also made me drop the book because like I couldn't believe the smut I was reading? Just the same as these white counterparts that we love. And then I didn't see the same drive. I didn't see the same push for the book. So that almost makes me want to push the books even more. You know, like that's just how my brain works. Like, I'm like, oh, well, you want this kind of panty dropping line. Okay. Let me introduce you to Alexis Daria. Let me introduce you to Adriana Herrera. Like, read this. And then you'll know. Then you'll know.
Yeah, I think it's such an important part too. Like we were talking before we hit record, we're all for reading what you love, reading to escape, reading for whatever reason it is that you are reading. And no buts here. And it is so important that if you're thinking, okay, I would love to read a second chance romance, cool. Sure. Have some variety in there. There are second chance romances across all of these, whether that is Latinx, whether that is Black romance, whether that is, you know, literally monster smut you can read. That second chance.
Straight up.
There's so much.
It's all there in so many forms. Yes.
Yes. And so like finding that variety, I think really helps people to say, oh, I like this trope. Wait a minute, I didn't know that these books had those tropes too. And there's also this idea that has been going around of people saying, oh, well, I can't relate. Yeah. I have lots of feelings on this. As someone who
have feelings on this too.
Is in the middle of like two really distinct cultures of like, I was too white to be Black. I was too Hispanic to be white. You know, I was very in the middle. And then also having a very white passing Hispanic and Italian mom. And then like being with my cousins on the Black side and just not really feeling like I could fit in anywhere. Like there are books for people who look like me that are mixed, that have these more interracial upbringings. And to see that reflected, you can also see that reflected in anything else. But I think that people get this idea of like, oh, well, I can't relate to that person's lived experience. Then what a great opportunity to learn is what I like to say.
It's already proven that reading enhances your empathy. Usually we hear this conversation coming from like those people that read like literary fiction, like, oh, I was in this person's shoes and I felt the grief and I felt them lost in the forest. Like, you know, we hear that conversation and those studies and those statistics always brought up with that. But like, of course, reading romance is reading a book as well. And if you read someone from a different experience, good for you. Now your horizons are broadened, like you're opening yourself up for more. And number two, you'll always see people reading alien romance, like goblin romance. And how can you relate to being coddled by a goblin or alien with an extra little spur? You know, can you really relate to that? A blue person came to your door and, you know, showed you the stars. Let's really talk about life experiences and relating to something that's so outside of like really, 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 really. Are you really claiming that? To me, I feel like that's not a believable stance because like you read outlandish things that you have probably will never go through, even though I believe in aliens. Like you will probably never go through this, you know? And you're out here like, oh, so in love. So apply the same principles, babe. Like open up a Latinx romance book. Come on, you can do it.
I mean, I'm right there. Beam me up, Space Daddy. I get it. I get it. But it's important, you know, we're here, we're on Earth, let's get grounded and like read about the experience. And you're so right. The empathy part, I think, is such a beautiful part that I know I personally have experienced in reading what people are struggling with, to be able to empathize with that. I think that reading, and especially in romance, because it is lighter, it is fluffier, but it still tackles really deep issues.
It does.
And I just think it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing that we're able to use as a tool.
I love romance for that same exact reason. Kennedy Wright has that famous quote that she says, like, to me, romance is the perfect space to explore all sorts of life experiences. She's a really good author to bring up about that too, because she writes all sorts of women, the complicated, the ones with a lot of backstory, with health issues. I think romance, that's one of the reasons why it is my favorite. I could read just only romance and be happy.
Yes.
I'm more so these past couple of years, I've been like, let me, include this, let me include that. This year has been like my nonfiction year. I've been trying to squeeze in some nonfictions here and there. But I could absolutely just read romance and I will be like the happiest person because you can explore so much just with that genre.
Yes, absolutely. When we say Latinx community, what exactly, and I actually found this really interesting when we had Latinx Heritage Month, of like what is Latinx heritage versus Hispanic heritage. And I know there's a lot of interchanging of that language, which isn't really accurate. So can you break down Latinx heritage and like what that looks like?
So when we speak about, first of all, Latinx, Latine, Latin, we're talking about the influence of both Portugal, Spain, and other Latin-rooted countries that came into what is now Latin America, right? And when I like to talk about the Hispanic versus Latinx, Hispanic has to do with Spain and a Spanish speaker. So when we look at Latin America, we're talking about Colombia, Chile, Ecuador, all those countries. But then when we talk about Brazil, when we talk about Haiti, those are Latin American countries. They don't speak Spanish, so we wouldn't label them Hispanic because in Haiti, they speak the French, and in Brazil, they speak Portuguese. So they can't be called Hispanic, right? But there is a label that covers all of us here, that we're all part of the people that were pillaged by them, by the Europeans. And that influence is all over the Caribbean, right? So when we celebrate Latinx Heritage Month, we are celebrating us, the people that have been influenced. Spain isn't really part of that. Spain is doing just fine.
Right.
It's more so about these countries that now, after all these years, they have developed their own culture and their own ways of speaking. So we're celebrating that heritage. And that's what the month from September 15th to October 15th, that's what we celebrate, that heritage, that diaspora. And that's the main difference. So you might meet somebody who just prefers to be called Hispanic. They might prefer to be called Latina, Latino, Latinx, and Latine, ending with an E. Those are the gender neutral, because Latina and Latino, that's very for her and for him. And then there's people that just identify in between, so they rather use Latinx, Latine. That's where all that comes from in the Heritage Month. And it really depends on the person, what they prefer to be labeled. How you can find out is just by sitting and observing to see how a person labels themselves. Sometimes they prefer to just be called Panamanian, Puerto Rican. It's very confusing because it's a self-identifying thing. And then we also evolve, and sometimes we're like, I don't like this label, so we might change it. So it's just one of those things that I know sometimes the non-Latina people don't know how to approach and label, which is completely fine to be confused. So are we. I highly just recommend just doing research on a person, sitting back and seeing how they label themselves. And you can always, if you find a confident way to approach someone and ask what they prefer to be labeled, you could do that as well. Hopefully there's enough trust in there that you can have some sort of exchange like that where you can find out what they prefer to be labeled.
Yeah. And just to name a few that tend to be labeled during Latinx Heritage Month, but actually do not fall under that category. Elena Armas, she's Spanish, like Spain. And then Abby Jimenez, that's her husband's last name. And she is not Hispanic. And she has come out and said, no, please don't put me on those lists because I'm not. And that takes space from other people. So those are two that I know off the top of my head that a lot of people tend to categorize in Latinx roundups and things like that.
Sure.
And I think that it's really important that we do, you literally could ask. I was creating a Latinx heritage kind of collage, and I said, hey, I think that person might be Latinx, but let me just send them a DM. And so I did. I sent them a DM. I said, hey, I'm doing a roundup. And you don't have to specify. You can say, I don't want to answer. That's totally cool too. But do you identify as Latinx? Can I put you in this roundup? And they said, yes, I do. I am this. Go ahead and add me. Thank you so much for thinking of me.
That.
And so you literally could just ask. It really is that simple.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
I love that you said that experience because usually that's how it is. If somebody knows you're coming in with respect and I want to correctly label you, I'm about to do a roundup, a recommendation. Do you mind sharing this? Perfect approach, honestly.
And also being it's okay to say no, right? If you don't want to be included.
Putting that little discrepancy, hey, by the way, ignore this, say that you don't feel comfortable and, got it.
Not a problem. I think that it's so important. Why do you think that it's important that there is Latinx representation in romance specifically, since obviously this is We Read Smut? Why do you think that's really important?
I think that we are more than our trauma stories. There are beautiful, wonderful, in-depth stories of people, of immigrants, of people that have made it, that have overcome something. And as those stories should exist, as they should. But we are more than that too. We fall in love. We have epic love stories to make you believe in love as well. We have epic love stories to be told and to be learned from and to be gushed after, right? We look at media, we look at the shows on TV, the movies put out, the Latinx population, we hardly get any representation. It's very difficult. Our shows are like the most canceled on HBO, on Netflix. Like when you have a full Latinx cast, it's so difficult to find a long-running show. So when you think about it in romance books, it's like even more vital. It's even more vital to buy the books, to read them, to rate them, to review them, to also recommend them, because that representation is so currently silenced in other forms of media right now. And just like I had mentioned earlier, we're just more than the trauma. We're more than the heartbreak. We're out here also looking for heart flutters, and we're out here looking for the next book Bobby to fall for.
We do deserve to see ourselves in these books, just like anybody else deserves to see themselves. There's this new show. I want to say it's Nick Jr. or Disney Jr. or one of those. It's called Primos.
Yeah.
And it's all about these cousins that are home together for the summer. And there's like 7 of them. And they all are there. It's so good. And what I literally only saw one episode and I was like, this is my new favorite show because the representation of all the cousins look like my family get-togethers of like such a variety of color, right? You have the, the white cousin with red hair. You've got the really dark cousin with like very, kinky hair. And it's like, that is what Hispanic families look like. That is what all the primos look like. And
100%.
I loved seeing that because especially my kids, they're even less Puerto Rican than I am. And so like being able to show them like, this is what our family get-togethers would look like. Like, this is what that is. This is why if you see someone who looks one way, you don't know for sure if they don't have Hispanic heritage or Latinx heritage. So don't judge someone just by how they look. And so being able to like present that to my kids, I thought was so fun. But I think it's such a step in the right direction for seeing ourselves, whatever color, we are on TV and not just as the George Lopez or the Jennifer Lopez or any of those, right? Like, like the very prominent stereotypical, which I hate that so much because we are so diverse in how we look, how we approach life, how we feel about our culture. And then you add in the fact of like those of us born in the US versus those of us immigrated or otherwise. There's so much to these stories that I think is worth saying.
There's so many experiences, and you bring up a really good point about like the stereotypical type of Latina or Latino that we grew up seeing. With the very little representation that we saw here in the US, there's a phenotypical common use. And that's why the reason why exactly like you pinpointed perfect, like we're like the J-Lo type of look, right? Yeah. And there's so much more. There's Afro-Latinos, especially that have been so underrepresented. And as someone who has like raising biracial children, it's really important that I show them that there's that existence and it's beautiful and has always been around, So thank you for saying that. Absolutely. There's such a wide range of how we look, such a wide range.
Yeah. So let's get to the not so fun part of these questions. I know. There are quite a few authors that, with intentions, whether good or bad, have done work to portray, I'm not going to say good work or bad work to portray Latinx characters. How do you think that authors could maybe do better, or even we as readers could do better to pinpoint maybe those stereotypical things or those things that are really not authentic and like keeping it respectful?
Sure. I wholeheartedly believe in calling in, not call out, but calling in, where you come with like empathy from one human to another, that you recognize somebody's here. They don't know everything. You're learning just like how I am. I have spotted this, misrepresentation. Here is this information. I am from this experience. This is like done incorrectly, right? There should be some sort of two-way communication where that can happen. I think currently as a Bookstagram population, book talk, a book influencer, book reviewer, we don't have that equipped yet, right? I think. And it makes sense because this is very new. The seeing rep in books, right? It's a very new thing, whether you are from the experience or you're writing about the experience. It's a very new thing. So pinpointing the errors and the harmful stereotypes, how to bring that up to someone is a very new thing, right? But this has happened, right? We have authors that have done very harmful stereotypes. And I would say, honestly, the best advice I could give is to just listen, right? Just listen. We do know that there's evil sides to everything, right? We have the people that just ride the coattails of a controversy and they just want to create noise. We know. And then we have the people that take the time to teach why this was harmful, right? Obviously, I can imagine as an author that caused harm, what's going to cross my algorithm first is probably the people that are just out here trying to make noise, right? And don't care about how much you learn. They just want to make noise. I can imagine it could be such a scary thing to be called out, to be called in. But the best advice I can give as an author that just found out that they caused harm is to just listen. Like simply listen, avoid reactions, just those innate reactions that when you're being called out for anything, whether your wife and your husband said, hey, you did this wrong, you might go on to the defense, right? That's a very human reaction. It's very understandable, right? So it might be a very innate and natural thing to go on the defense. But because this is an experience outside of your own, the best thing that you could do is sit back and learn. I believe that in the future of us, and I don't know how distant, how near this future is, that we will have like pillars, people that you can come to for information, right? People appointed, like you wrote hurtful Latinx identity in this book. Let's trace you to this team. Let's put you over to this team for consultation so that you can know, right? What you can do now as an author, definitely sensitivity reads, and you want a wide array of experiences, right? It's really important not to get like a team of the yes people that are like, yes, everything you wrote is perfect. You're good. You're good. You want someone that's non-biased and that says, you shouldn't use this word and you shouldn't use this description. This is actually has a really harmful history to it. You want someone that's going to give you that honest feedback, understanding that this is not your experience. So it's okay to get feedback, right? So that you could put out the best work that you can put out. As a community, though, I honestly, it's so hard for me to say anything because there's so many of us.
Yeah.
There are really good books out there that I follow a couple of people that are really good at recommending nonfiction about calling in a community that I need to find out the books. They've showed them like in their stories. I need to go back and see it. But I believe in like at least us as a community reading these type of books, right? And learning how to actively communicate with the author, the person that did harm. Are you bringing this feedback to better something? Are you bringing this feedback just to cause shame? I think as a question, that's an important question we should all ask ourselves. This topic is so complex in that manner because there's so many moving parts, right? My wish and hope is for world peace, but like, it's really like both the person giving the feedback, the person receiving to like develop a healthy exchange, right? In a perfect world, that's what it would look like. But as for now, authors I feel like they need to really examine, why are you writing this experience outside of your own? What's the purpose? Is it that important to include this? And are you equipped to outsource and make sure that this representation is correct?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know. It's like
such a like complex issue.
I know. It can get really sticky really fast. I mean,
really fast.
There's two examples I can think of. One, an author posted on Threads. They have since deactivated their account. They were like, shout out to the 3 Black women who said my book was great, and then screw everybody else in the BIPOC community. And it was like, whoa, that is not how you respond.
Oh my God.
Ever. Sometimes you just need to sleep on things before you click clack on your phone, Yeah. And then another example that was actually really great was one I had where someone had wrote something in their book, and it wasn't even anything like heritage or that. It was, they had mentioned an audio narrator that was definitely not someone you would want to mention in your book. I did not realize that she would just made up the name, and it was a coincidence that this other person was a narrator and was a trash human. And so I reached out to her and I was like, I am 100% sure that you did not mean to do this, but heads up, this person has harmed people. And, like, and she was like, wow, I had no idea.
It's a scary message to send, by the way.
And I was terrified.
So I applaud you. I honestly, that's a scary message to send.
Yes. I was like, I know you, and I know that you would never do this. And so I just want it to, like, be brought to your attention. And I feel so terrible because I was part of her ARC team, and I didn't get to read the book before it came out. So it was already out in the world. And then she ended up going back and doing edits, changing the name, and like made a post about it. And she was like, I'm so sorry for anyone I've hurt. And I was like, no, I 100% knew, like, there's no way that she would actually do this intentionally. And like, I know your heart was in the right place. And I was really happy that when I sent the message, but did it from a place of like, not, well, you did this thing wrong and how dare you? 'Cause I think sometimes too, as the offended, we can also come across that way. And sometimes we do need to
100%
sit and think on it and say, okay, I'm a human. They're a human. Humans make mistakes.
Yes.
This was harmful, or this really bothered me. What is the next step for me personally? Correct. Do I need to talk to a friend? Do I need to talk to a therapist? Do I need to just wash my hands of it and look away? Like, there are lots of options, I think, for us that we can take. But this is why it's so important to read own voices. And I think that it really helps us to be able to see a more accurate representation beyond what we see in Hollywood or what we've seen in, the big five publishing companies. Seeing those own voices, I think, really helps us to be able to experience these stories and these heritages in a different way.
Correct. I totally agree. It's definitely a two-way street. This is a constant exchange when you're calling in. A constant exchange, like me, the person calling someone in to inform and educate and hopefully help correct. And then also the callee, right? The person that's hearing this feedback and maybe learning. There's a constant exchange where people need to evaluate the feelings, the emotions. It's really hard on the internet though, because a lot of people want justice now.
Yeah.
They want it now. They're like, you did it wrong. Now you burn into flames,
Yes. Oh, it's so true. So now that we got the not so fun part out of the way, let's talk about some of your favorite Latinx authors. I want to know all of them. And like, if someone's like, I want to make sure that I'm including Latinos into my reading, where do you recommend that they begin with some of these stories?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. I hope you guys are ready. Warm up your wrist.
We'll make sure we have all of these linked in the show notes as well. So if you're like, wait, what was that? I didn't write fast enough. We got you.
Good. Okay. Definitely my OG girly pops, Alexis Daria. Some really great romance. I love that, first of all, she cares equally about her female and male leads in her books, as in their mental health also matters. The male's mental health and where they are. They're also actively working on themselves, which is sometimes as readers we're like, oh my God, why doesn't he have his together? Like, he's only supposed to make me swoon. But she equally takes care of both her characters individually. That's something I really love about Alexis Daria's writing. Adriana Herrera, she is the queen of just like Afro-Latinx representation. Like, if you want to see yourself, you want to hear about the beautiful curls, you want to hear about just how feeling a little bit different. And she also has like her historical romance series that she does such avid research. For me, since I'm such a fangirl of her, whenever she posts like, this is all the research I did, I just lap that up because like, it's amazing. She'll really go in, she'll befriend librarians and historians as she finds out like about historic facts while she's building her books. The best thing about her is all her female leads are so headstrong, and they tend to be first or second gen immigrants. So they're also like the mothers of the friend group. that they need to learn how to say no and how to grab less responsibilities and how to let the male lead that she's introducing take care of her because he takes care of her. That's something about her men too. They take care from head to toe and sometimes spend time in other areas for a really long time.
Love it.
And then we have Mia Sosa, that she's the rom-com queen. She's the one that I will just like tilt my head back and cackle out loud because she's so dang funny. And I love that all her books, you can find different kind of Latinx representation. And sometimes it's like the double couple. Sometimes it's a girl. Sometimes it's the guy. She gives us like this wide range of all these experiences, all while making laugh. And she does some great steam too.
Yeah.
It's so funny when you talk to her because she's like, she speaks like, you know, and she has this cute little giggle and you wouldn't think that she writes like this smut, you know? I love Mia Sosa. I would also recommend Natalie Caña. She's a Puerto Rican writer, Puerto Rican Dominican writer, and she is also a rom-com queen. Like she, oh my God, her conversations and the chat on her book. I can't tell you how many people that take my recs from her will send me voice notes like, this lady is so funny. So funny. Her third book is about to come out. Well, we're going to air this later, but it's about to come out at the end of this month. And it's like her steamiest one yet. They're like a really messy couple that would secretly hook up. Yeah. And they meet again and they can't stop secretly hooking up. And I love that kind of stuff. Oh, that's like my catnip.
Yeah.
I also recommend Jade Hernandez. She's a Mexican writer, Mexican-American writer. She writes like Learn to Love You. When I read that, what was that, last year? That was such a standout read. She really reminds me a lot of Alexis Daria in the fact that she really takes care of both her characters. They both have a storyline to overcome. And she writes the dirtiest smut scenes, including like Spanish dirty talk. Like the man will say the dirtiest, filthiest things in Spanish to the female lead. And that like, whew.
And she has some like diverse genres, yes. Right? So not just rom-coms.
She has a pen name for fantasy and paranormal called Elira Anaya Ceres. Mm-hmm. And in that one, because people are creatures, you get all sorts of representation in those books. You get like worldly and out of worldly representation in those books. I love her. She'll tickle all your fancies, whether you just like rom-com. She does dark romance too, because she has a motorcycle club series. And she also has like the paranormal and fantasy with her pen name. I cannot not talk about A.H. Cunningham.
Oh.
I cannot not talk about A.H. Cunningham, okay? Like, that woman is a master at smut, at kink. She takes care of the kink that she writes. She's the one that does research. So when she includes something that's like a clamp here, a slap there, she has done her research. And then not only that, she's the perfect example of an Afro-Latina that she writes both from just the Black experience. She'll write just Black love, Black romance, and she'll write Latinx romance too. And she writes all in between, and she does it so wonderful. Like, sometimes I'll read a book, I'm like, are these people even Hispanic? Are they Latino? I don't even know. I don't even care. Like, I love their slang. Like, everybody in here is brown. I don't know where they're from, but like, she does that so expertly. And even though I may be confused, I know that she did it correct. Because there's something about her when she puts out a piece of work, she makes sure things are done correct when it comes to representation through the scope of things. I think if you're starting with Latinx, if you start with these, like, this will open you up for even more. Like, it's so easy to keep branching out. Not only that, I feel like these Latina authors, they're always like cheering each other on. If you follow them on social media, they're always praising each other's pub day and stuff like that. And they equally love indie authors too. So they like exalt indie authors. They also exalt the trad pub. So if you start with those, I feel like I'm already treating you to some really yummy stuff.
Yes. And I think you can find a trope in there that's like one that you like. Yes, read what you love and branch out and find new things, find new experiences. It's going to be great. I promise.
I promise.
Yes. I think Mia Sosa was the first one that I read in like this current reading journey that I was like, oh my God, what is this? I want to eat it all up.
Yes. It's kind of funny because you kind of enter and you're like laughing. Ha ha ha. This is funny. And then you're like, oh, Mia Sosa, you made me laugh and you've tickled me, you know?
Yep. Yeah, I had a friend, I was telling her, I was like, you need to read her. You need to check her out. And then she got to a certain scene, bent over a car on the side of the flower field. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, yup. She was like, dang. I was like, yup.
Mia so something to that.
Yes. Oh, it's so lovely. So good. Now, obviously, we are huge proponents of don't just read Latinx during Latinx Heritage Month. Don't just read Black romance during Black Heritage Month. Like, just, guys, come on. All year round.
Yeah, all year.
Do it. So what are some things that you recommend or ways that you recommend that people are able to like hold themselves accountable to really diversifying? Sure. I know some things that I have off the top of my head, following people like you, people who are from this community that are sharing these representations. Also, the Diverse Baseline Challenge is a really great one as well. They've got lots of prompts that will really broaden your horizons. We're going to be doing the Alphabet BIPOC Challenge again in 2025. So finding something in there. There's so many different ones, but what are some ways that you recommend?
I definitely think that people, us as readers, if we adapt like very much like the Diverse Baseline, a 50-50 rule for every white book you buy something BIPOC. Tell yourself, well, okay, I'm going to go buy this Allie Hazelwood, but I recently heard about Alexis Daria. I recently heard about Ophelia Martinez. I'm also going to go find Ophelia Martinez book. I want to buy this Colleen Hoover or whatever. Let me buy this other dark romance by a Black author, right? Yeah. Like, tell yourself when you go purchase at a bookstore, don't leave that bookstore without something BIPOC. And I mean BIPOC, I mean non-white, you know, as well as, like you said, following people who read like this all year, doing the challenges. They're fun, but they also, just like attending a book club that makes, you know, that maybe a book club will pick a book for you and you just have to ride along and you say, oh, wow, I ended up liking this book. I would have never liked it. That's what the challenges are for. It's very much like that. They give you this prompt. You try and fill it in. How do you fill it in? You're already following the creators to give you the recs, right? So you read that book and then you find out that this is a great writer, because a great writer is a great writer no matter what, you know? Sometimes we don't know that we're like ingrained. We've been taught all our lives to look away from things and not find things appealing that are outside of us. So that's why you follow the people that recommend diverse all year as well, because then you go and you pick up that book and you find out that it's excellently written with great swoons and great smut and great this, and you had a great experience. So definitely like the Diverse Baseline, if you can create that as your motto every time you go to purchase a book, when you go and purchase on Kindle or any of your ebook providers, also pick up a counterpart. Just tell yourself, I just got this white author. Now I remember that I'm going to be holding myself accountable. Let me pick this one up. Also following the authors. Authors are always like sharing when their book is free for the week.
Yeah.
Like that's how I get like half of the books that I have. Like when they're like, oh, it's free today only. I'm like, runs to Kindle store, searches the book and grabs it that day.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel like this is a whole side tangent and could be a whole episode on itself, but like there is no reason to be pirating books. There are so many, especially in the romance collection. There are so many times that authors have them for free. I mean, people like you and I constantly sharing when things are free. I mean, 100%. Today we're recording. There are over 560 books that are free literally today.
Yes, and stuff your Kindle Day, literally. And they even gave you the categories for BIPOC. Yep. Like, just go in there and grab them. They are free.
Yes.
Free.
Come on, guys. Carla, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for being on. Where can people find you, get to know you, hang out with you?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on here. I love our conversation. This was so special. But you can find me on Instagram and TikTok with the same name, Carla is Reading. And I'll be posting reviews. I'm kind of chaotic. I'm kind of crazy, but I'm here for a blast.
Yes. And I love your lives. You always do a bunch of lives with authors and like getting new authors in front of people. And I love that aspect as well. If I notice that you're live, I usually try to pop in for a few seconds if I can. Like, hey, who's this?
You.
What's going on? What's going on over here, guys?
Who's talking to you?
Yes, exactly. I love it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Yes. I appreciate your time.